So, welcome back to the Mentor Sessions, part of the On Point podcast series from Acceleration Point. I am your host, Linda Traylor. This is a podcast where I sit down with medical affairs leaders who are not just good leaders, they actually rise to the level of exceptional, in my opinion, because they are leaders that have shaped this profession and pay it forward by developing other exceptional leaders, which means these people are people you need to hear from. Today's guest is someone that I've had the privilege of observing firsthand through the MSL Society Advisory Board. And I'll tell you, there are leaders who talk about medical affairs excellence, and then there are leaders who live it. And Paul Ward lives it. Paul is currently the head of field medical for oncology and hematology, medical value and access at BeOne Medicines. But his story in medical affairs goes back 3 decades, and I'll let him tell you his story. But I did read somewhere that he has attended 23 consecutive years of American Society for Hematology. And I view that as someone that not just walks the talk, but is I've heard him use this phrase before, but is in the arena. What sets Paul apart isn't just his longevity or his depth of knowledge in oncology and hematology. It's his point of view. You will hear me talk about points of view a lot in this podcast, in these episodes, because the leaders on here have points of view that are born in the arena, which is very on brand for Paul.
Welcome to On Point, the Mentor Sessions podcast, where the most exceptional leaders in medical affairs share their real stories behind their growth, mistakes, breakthroughs, and leadership journeys. The views and opinions expressed by our guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of their employers or affiliated organizations.
I am genuinely excited for this conversation. Paul, welcome to the Mentor Sessions.
Linda, that was such a lovely introduction. I'm humble. Thank you for that. That was very nice of you. And I could say all those things about you too in terms of shaping medical affairs. So glad we're having the opportunity to do this together. Thanks for making it happen.
Absolutely. Welcome. Okay, so let's start off with just tell us your story. How did you become a medical affairs professional?
Yeah. So, not unlike a lot of people back in the, late 80s, you started in sales. There weren't a lot of positions in pharma, let alone in medical affairs. And so I was hired by a district manager named Rick Lacey at Beecham Laboratories. Some of your listeners may know about Tymentin, but those were the 2 antibiotics that we were really proud of back in the day. And that was where I started my career selling antibiotics. Left Rick from Beecham, and we became StuckLine Beecham, became a hospital rep, then an oncology sales representative. And then in 1996, had the opportunity to become a regional research manager at Lilly Oncology, which was my first foray into medical affairs. And so that's how it all got started. And then, as many leaders, you begin in the field, and then eventually moved to AstraZeneca, where I became a regional director of the team that I was a member of as an MSL at AZ, and then eventually became a national director there. And then that kind of set me off on the national director of various companies. Now, as you mentioned, at BeOne Medicine, which I'm super proud to be a part of.
What drew you to medical affairs, Paul?
Well, sales is hard. I mean, I think you talk to any medical science liaison and they'll tell you that job is hard, but sales is tough. And, quite honestly, it was, I was pretty good at it, but it just there was something missing just in terms of the quality of interaction and what I wanted to talk about. And as you and your listeners know, when you're in sales, you're confined by the 4 corners of the package insert, and it becomes very routine sometimes in terms of the messaging and the features and benefit and closing. And I did it for a while, and I'm glad I did. I thought it was excellent training for a lot of what we do in medical in terms of taking initiative and, seeking out KOLs and HCPs and finding creative ways to be effective But medical was just such a better fit for me to be able to talk about data and research. And I thought, honestly, it was more in line with, patient care. And I wanted to impact patients and quality of care. And this was a great place to do it. So never regretted my decision to move into medical. But that's how it all got started.
Oh, wow. So essentially, I just heard you say that you really a desire for a deeper, richer, outside the four corners of the package insert conversation, and then it just kind of expanded from there.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome. So, what is one decision or mindset shift that most positively impacted your career in medical affairs?
Yeah, I think like many going back to my, MSL days, you think you're in medical and you have to know everything. And look, we get hired because we've got capacity and, most of people in medical affairs have a clinical background. Um, but I think not believing on a daily basis that I had to know the answer to everything. The people that we call on oftentimes are the people that wrote the textbook. So you've got to be a teacher at times. But I think when I really started to blossom in the role is when I just, be a student again, ask questions, learn, and then relay knowledge of what you've learned, not only to other, HCPs in the region that I represented, but also learn and bring those learnings back to the organization. So it was really that mindset shift from, oh, I must be the teacher now, to being a student of oncology and a student of the institution and a student of what the organization needs. And when you can marry the region and the institution that you're calling on and the company, that's really the magic for a medical science liaison, isn't it? When you're able to, match up
Yeah.
goals and needs and answer questions and inform the business in certain areas. So I think that's what I became good at, is really asking better questions and becoming a better student and learning the needs of all parties and matching those up. That was the mindset shift, rather than just going out and trying to be the expert because I work in medical,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I think that's a common theme in that pivot point of confidence where it's no longer a focus on what you're presenting, but what you're learning, that curiosity first mindset. So I love that. It's really, and I think it is. I think I recall when I was first in MSL that I felt like I had to be an expert as well. And I didn't start really evolving. You almost plateau with that mindset. And so I didn't really start evolving or growing until I think started being more curious, from the conversations.
Yeah, sounds like we had a similar uh, discovery there. That's interesting, Linda.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so what failure or apparent misstep set you up for later success in your career?
Oh no, that's a whole book chapter on Paul Ward's failures. But I guess if I had to pick one, um, I think you and I talked about this at one point many years ago. But in 2002, the reason I joined AstraZeneca is we were bringing a targeted therapy in lung cancer, Iressa, to the market. And it was a phenomenal drug. It was interesting for us oncology nerds. Doublet chemotherapy had taken us to a place. There was a famous study done by Joan Schiller at the ECOG 1594. I still remember the number, where they looked at four different doublet chemotherapy regimens. Carbotaxol, and gemcitabine was part of that from Lilly, and CPT-11, which was another doublet combination that they tried. And basically, these chemos took us as far as we were going to go. So superimposable PFS, progression-free survival curves. OS really didn't look that much different either. And that was the study, as it said, that launched 1,000 targeted therapies, because now we knew has gotten us here, but if we're going to get further, we need more biologically targeted agents. And Iressa was one. So all that sounds good. And we were approved um, not long thereafter, so around 2004, on a accelerated approval, and then Uh, we failed patients. The drug did not meet its primary endpoint in the confirmatory phase 3. And I still remember that 6:30 a.m. phone call where we learned that not only did the drug fail, but because of the accelerated mechanism, we now have to remove it from the marketplace. Feel about people and failure, don't you, Linda? And certainly that was not fun. And this drug that had all this hype and recognition suddenly was being removed from the market. So I think really, working with my leadership, I was working for a guy named Doug Wilmot at the time, who was my regional director, and he leaned on me, and I leaned on him, and we get this through this together. Not everybody stayed on the team at that point, but it was a lot of work to do to clean up investigator-initiated trials that were no longer going to move forward, a company-sponsored trials, and a trip to our competitor to basically lay out trials and say, hey, we're going to, in the interest of patients, if you'd like to continue these trials with your agent, take a pick. They're yours if you'd like them and if it meets your strategic goals. And then, of course, the KOL management that goes with that when you've got to go around with your MSLs and tell them, hey, your trial has been canceled. We're no, and that's horrible for everybody, especially the patients and the investigators who put so much time and effort into it. So I think sticking through that and really showing the business that in a time of a failure, a failed trial, that I was going to stick through and help lead others and do the right thing. I think that's one failure in my career, that we kind of turned lemons into lemonade a bit. And then we really, look at what AstraZeneca Oncology has become today. Those were early days, but the foundation really was laid with those decisions and that drug, Iressa, that meant so much to so many people that failed.
Yeah. I think if you've been in industry long enough, you've been through a similar situation where a product doesn't meet expectations, whether it fails a trial or just doesn't perform as well as you were hoping. And I love that your choice was to stick through it. And I think that's a good learning opportunity to hone your skills in having difficult conversations and being able to still lean into the curiosity side and listening skills, et cetera, when engaging KOLs after a failed trial. They're used to them. I mean, I think that's one of the things that physicians and especially KOL investigators, if they've been in any number of trials, they've been on trials that have failed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's an interesting experience that a lot of people will go through at some point in their career.
Yeah, clinical research and drug development is not for the faint of heart, for sure. And it's funny because, and I know you've been a mentor at the MSL Society too. So many of the newer and aspiring MSLs get their first chance in smaller biotech organizations, which are maybe one trick ponies. Maybe there's only one drug, or it's the first of a couple, but the other drugs are 4 or 5 years away. So they're really leveraged on things, and they're rightful to have their eyes open and look around and say, hey, are there some signs here that things aren't going as well as I may have thought, or that we're going to be bought, or those kinds of things. So we get a lot of questions, and I know you do too, about from mentees that we're mentoring. What are the signs and symptoms of a company that's maybe beginning to have some smoke signals that things aren't good? And so unless you've been through things like I just mentioned, and you've been through, you don't recognize some of those signs. So it's always good to impart some of that wisdom on people as to what to look for and how to handle and questions to ask, and don't run. Sometimes it is the right decision, but oftentimes it's not. So you have to make those decisions for yourself.
Yeah. And ask the right questions. As you say, there's no harm in asking and being transparent about how what you're seeing and how you're feeling and the best way to handle it. I think that's one of the keys that is a marker of somebody really having a rich career, because they're really willing to kind of have the difficult conversation even internally.
Yep.
And ask those questions. That's good advice. Well, what, in your opinion, what separates a good leader from an exceptional leader?
Well, I'll tell you a story. This is great. I when I was at Lilly Oncology, I worked in the medical reported through pharmaceutical research and development. And we had a great leader, Dr. Stephen Paul, who ran R&D. And what he said back then is partially the answer to your question. We just gotten through a town hall, and someone came up to the microphone and said, Dr. Paul, he just laid out the whole pipeline, and we had a regulatory plan. And the question was, Dr. Paul, you've got all these molecules in your development and all these people in the room here. What's the hardest part of your job? And this is a guy that had, several hundred molecules in discovery across the different therapeutic areas, and close to 700 or 800 people, I think, at the time reporting to him. And his answer stuck with me. I was probably 28, 27, 28 years old. But I knew when I heard this was going to shape my leadership career and just the way I looked at life. And he said, by the time these molecules get through phase 1 and phase 2 and into phase 3, you pretty much know how they're going to behave. People, not so much. Think about that. People, in understanding people and having capacity to listen and empathize and knowing whether you're grabbing the carrot or the stick, and why, and giving people the chance to be heard. I think these are all the things that make an exceptional leader, rather than what we all kind of do at the beginning is, hey, Paul's in charge now, just get on board and follow me. That doesn't last long. We all think we all think that's, those are early mistakes that we all kind of fall into. It's to some degree, but I think the exceptional leaders do that, and they recognize that human beings don't show up every day the same way, let alone every quarter or every year. So you really have to flex your style, not just one style with people, but in a 2 or 3 year, if you manage somebody, you may have to flex several different styles during that time when you're together. So that's what kind of takes the good to exceptional, in my opinion.
Yeah. I certainly made those same mistakes when I became a manager early on in my career. I think one of the things that I probably became a manager too fast. Sometimes I think people who are high performers in their individual contributing jobs get promoted early sometimes before they're ready to be leaders.
Yep.
And although I'm grateful, it helped me launch my career path early. And I learned, as I went, I had some pretty significant failures. And the one I regret the most is not leaning into reading more, learning more about what good leadership is. And so I did all the same things that I just like my way or the highway type of stuff. And that was, a little bit of age and naivete and overconfidence, and probably even a little bit over my skis and in my role. So, it's good feedback. All right, let's talk a little bit about, like, how do you define success in medical affairs, and has that definition evolved over time?
Wow. Well, it certainly has evolved. I mean, one of my leaders in the past, Mary Alice Dwyer, who was a leader in MAPS, known by many probably that listening to our podcast. She used to get angry, and I didn't understand how much emotion she had or why she had so much emotion to medical affairs being referred to as a supportive function, right? I think at one point in time that was true. So I think the evolution that you speak of is really, watching medical go from, they don't have, they go talk science and good things happen. Someone needs to talk to these KOLs about more than, what's in the visual aid and in sales and access. We as a function have moved from that into, the fourth strategic pillar of a pharmaceutical or biotech company or device company for that matter. And I think watching that occur has been just a real joy for all of us that have been in medical affairs for any period of time, to watch it really blossom and grow and watch companies invest more and more. And with that investment comes more responsibility, more measures of success, more prove it if you're going to have a team of 30, or if you're going to have a team of 3 or 4, no one, is really paying much attention to that investment. When it grows to 30 or 40, yeah, you've got to show some outcomes and some victories to support the amount of investment that your function is getting. So yeah, just watching that occur over time has been really, really the joy. I think that many of us who've been doing this a long time, no, I think we've all really, really enjoyed that journey, including yourself, I'm sure, Linda.
I think that it's really meaningful observation in the sense that I think once we started to collectively make that mental transition that we're, instead of a service organization, a fourth strategic pillar. I still think what lagged a little bit, and what we're still learning to do well, is like, as a strategic partner, as you just said, you've got to show return. You've got to understand what your accountability and responsibility is as a strategic partner, because you certainly have more accountability and responsibility than being a service organization.
Yep.
And so, if you want to be that, it comes with some responsibility. So I think that's really a great observation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, what's the worst career advice you see commonly given to rising medical affairs professionals?
Yeah, I think it's something you touched on earlier, which is everyone wants to get promoted so quickly and do something else. And I really truly believe that medical science liaison or field medical roles are the best roles within any company. And yet everybody is in such a hurry to, check the box and move into leadership or to another position or climb the ladder instead of just enjoying the journey. My best times in the industry were, weekend meetings at cooperative group, research cooperative group meetings that, the National Cancer Institute sponsored with investigators, and watching things evolve and watching standards of care change and developing deep relationships with these thought leaders over time, to where, you still get calls from people and your friends on Facebook, and you get Christmas cards, and you go to, some of the society meetings, and you're meeting them for happy hour, coffee or dinner, whatever that may be. Don't rush it, man. That's just, it's the gold. It really is. And I see people that I interview for MSL jobs, Linda, that will sit there and say, Paul, I've dreamt of being an MSL my whole life. I played MSL in the sandbox with my sister, believe it or not, right? They had scientific exchange in the treehouse. And then 8 or 9 months later, they're like, yeah, I'm ready for something else. I'm like, yeah, what happened to the treehouse? They just get, and it's pressure from, parents or colleagues, or I got to post something on LinkedIn that I'm not just, not developing in my career doesn't always mean get promoted and into a new position. So we've done a good job, I think, in field medical, having career paths where people can stay in there and show that, scope from MSL to senior MSL to executive or principal MSL. But sometimes that's not enough for folks. They need to have a director or associate director or, some other leadership title in their path. And yeah, that's the worst career advice. Just enjoy it. And I use the analogy of, grinding through gears in a car. You got to wait for the engine to get from first to second to third gear, and then put it into overdrive into fourth. So just don't rush the gears. Let it happen, and be mindful and take advantage of opportunities that come. But don't put so much pressure on yourself that you're not enjoying the journey, because it's a great ride being in field medical. Don't rush it.
That's really good advice, because and I'm sure you know these people. I've got friends that have been lifelong field medical professionals. And some of them are just, just that next level communicator, relationship builder, people want to be around them type of people. And they've leaned into the fact that they're in the role they need to be doing.
Yeah.
And have fully developed themselves as, professional medical science liaison. They're not that many, as you say. A lot of MSLs fall into the trap of, career advancements means moving to a leadership role or different role. But those that have leaned into being a professional career-long MSL, some of them are happier than most people in this profession. So yeah, it's interesting.
They figured it out, haven't they? I love that. And yeah, when we as leaders, how valuable are those people in your organization
Oh my God.
that have that history of how decisions got made and what's going on at this unity and how we got to where we are. And here's a trap door. And I know that if we bring this up, the KOL is going to have either a very happy reaction or a sad face if we go down that path. It's just that relationship equity just takes time, and I'm so thankful for those types of professionals in our organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so what belief about medical affairs did you hold strongly 10 years ago that you've completely changed your mind about now?
Well, I think maybe more than 10 years ago. One of the things, and right in that time frame, if you start thinking about corporate integrity agreements and Office of Inspector General investigations, I think the strongly held belief, we used to say the church and state, like commercial and medical had to be separate, that they shouldn't even look at each other in the hallway, shouldn't go to each other's meetings, shouldn't share information. And I think in a very compliant way, both the Office of Inspector General, you don't see corporate integrity agreements in this area. So I'm really pleased about that, because there is a need to work cross functionally and collaborate. And I think we in the industry have figured it out to the point where the government is much more comfortable with the way we're doing things, because we've self-policed and we've come up with good compliance guardrails. And so those strongly held beliefs that you shouldn't ever talk to a sales rep or a marketing was professional, and that we should stay in our own lane. Those beliefs were very strongly held, 10, 15 years ago. I'm really, because it's what I like about medical is we collaborate with development and clinical operations and marketing and sales and market access. And I think that's where the real fun is in medical, is you're just in the moment with all of these different functions. And you need to know about all those things as you're showing up in front of the customer or the investigator. You have to know what everybody else is working on and doing to be effective, or you run the risk of wasting some time and duplicating efforts and in that. So that, I think that's a strongly held belief that has gone away, and I'm pleased about it.
Yeah, I think it's not only gone away. I think from the top down and sometimes even from the bottom up, the expectation has changed too. That's the minimum. Collaboration is meant, is the intent.
Yes.
And yeah, I do think we all know the industry well enough that the guardrails are in place. So that's really that's good feedback and good advice. Is that don't go into this field, this profession, thinking that you have to isolate yourself from your cross-functional colleagues that are associated with revenue. It's not about that. They have an intent to improve patient lives just like we do. So let's do that together.
Right.
I love
And
that.
advice to anyone on the podcast too that's listening is know the rules of engagement, know your compliance person, pay attention to your guidance that you're given, and you're going to be in good shape. And we'll go back to what we were talking about earlier too. If you have a question, ask it. Don't assume that you can't do something or that you should do something. Number one, look at your references that you have that have been given to you. And number two, if there's still a question, then, our compliance people are really, I think, across the board, really available to folks and really want to help you get to what you can do, not just what you can't do. And we're all very thankful for that, that we can find compliant ways, maybe not the way that's been suggested by some, but I think the real successful folks are the ones that get to, you can't do this, but how about this as an alternative? Now we're cooking with gas, right? Now we've got a way forward. So it's not just no, it's how about this? That's in almost always that can be
Yeah,
in a compliant way.
absolutely. Good feedback. Okay, what new skill, mindset, or technology do you believe medical affairs professionals must adopt to thrive in the next decade?
It's a two-part answer. So I think anyone that doesn't recognize that artificial intelligence is here to stay and that's going to be a big part of our lives, and that our HCPs, our patients, our institutions, our managers are all using AI to some degree. I think that's the first layer of my answer. Is don't ignore and don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Figure out how it can be used in a thoughtful, compliant, and useful way. But the second level is, I think we can get a little too reliant on that, and so don't ignore the social skills, the interaction skills that one needs to really be successful, because that's what's going to get you there. Like, everybody can look stuff up on open evidence or whatever artificial intelligence tool you're going to be using, or that your HCPs are using. But that ability to discuss and be thoughtful and intriguing and ask questions about things, that don't let that skill die. I see particularly some young people that are really, like, they would prefer a Zoom call over a face-to-face interaction, and
Yeah.
it's a little scary to me. I mean, there's a place for Zoom calls like we're doing here, and we all need them from time to time with our HCPs. But, that again, going back to that long-term trusted advisor relationship that all MSLs and field medical professionals are striving for, that's hard to do if it's eight out of 10 of your interactions are on a Zoom call. You need to be in the office. You need to be in the arena, as you said. We'll talk about more about that. It's one of my favorite speeches of all time. But you got to be present, and you got to be with folks, and you have to, it's just that personal connection. Don't lose it. So AI is certainly top of the list there, but don't lose the personal touch. I think those are the two skills we gotta keep in mind.
Yeah. That's the human element of it, I think, that if AI makes us lazy and we don't lean into what opportunities it's giving us to be more communicative with our field, the medical community, and it's just another avenue of conversation with in my opinion, is how are they using AI? How's it impacting clinical care? What do they see the challenges are? We need to understand that as well as being able to use it for our own enhanced productivity, et cetera. So I think it's a good way of looking at it, because AI is here to stay, but there's still a human element that's critical to what we do in medical affairs.
Yeah, someone's going to make a lot of money figuring out that AI is only as good as the prompts. It's only as good as the questions that you give it to answer. And so now, if you marry what I just said to say, all right, if we can teach field medical to ask better prompts in one-on-one interactions, and have those at the ready, right? Two or three of these every time you're out and about, that you're really asking the right questions. I think there's some synergy there, that people that really lean on tech can figure out how to ask better prompts in the face-to-face interaction. There's something there. Somebody's going to make some money doing that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The last medical affairs professional question before we get into some of the more personal questions is, what do you think the future holds for medical affairs?
Well, I think it's certainly a very bright future. I think if you look at what HCPs really desire, they need information. They need clinically relevant information in a timely way. So whether you're in medical information or field medical or on the payer side, we're well positioned to meet the needs of our customers, and that's only going to grow. It's only going to get more complicated with pathways and more drugs and more biologics, and more technology on the diagnostic side, and more decision making that needs to occur. So I think I can't think of another function in pharma that's as well positioned to meet the needs of our external customers and investigators than medical affairs is. That's for sure. So I think it's really bright, and I think we've also, when we're hiring, I'm just amazed at the quality of the MSLs that we're interviewing. they come in and they're so smart, Linda, aren't they? And they're so motivated and so good. And it's just like I think not only is medical affairs good in terms of where the function is positioned, but I think the people that we're hiring into medical affairs are the right people to lead us forward to that next level. So I think it's really bright, and I'm so proud of what we've helped build and the people that we brought into medical, and really excited for the future.
Yeah. I also agree that the next generation of professionals are going to bring a completely unique and different point of view that's going to challenge everything we think about what we're doing in our role. And it should. I mean, that's the fun part of evolving, is figuring out how to do something better, different, using the new tools and the way the whole environment has evolved. So I agree. I think the future of medical affairs is bright. I think there's going to be a lot of challenge in decision making, and we've got to get it right. But I do think it's bright. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Turn over to some personal questions here. Looking back, what advice would you give your 30-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
Oh, wow. There's some stock picks in there that I'd like to whisper in my ear if I could go back in time, for sure. Uh, but on the more professional side, it's just don't just be more patient with people. I can think of times where I've done it well. I can think of times where I wish I would have been a little bit more patient and listened better and been more empathetic. So just some of those skills. I think back to our previous conversation. When you're a new manager, you think, all right, hold my coffee, watch how this gets done. And doing it like me is really the only path to success, and it's not. There's believe me, my parents would agree. One Paul Ward is enough on this planet. I don't need to replicate myself. Give people that freedom to operate in other directions. So I would just be a little more empathetic, I think, and try to understand. Seek first to understand, and then be understood. I mean, that's wise advice. I would give it to myself every day.
Yeah, that is good advice. Something we all need to continue to learn, because I think it's a battle we always fight. It's a long journey to remember that there are many paths to success, and they are all going at it a different way, but that doesn't make them wrong. Awesome. Great advice. So who had the greatest influence on you, on how you lead or mentor others, and what did they teach you?
Well, I've had many. I've been so blessed to, went to good Catholic schools, had a lot of nuns and priests that helped shape, played a lot of sports. So good coaches, great teachers throughout my, academic career, grade school, high school, college. But I really do think in industry, I mentioned Doug Wilmot before. He was my manager when the Iressa failure occurred, and I learned a lot from Doug. And he hired me twice, actually. So I guess I got to tip the cap to the guy that hired me twice. You're unhappy with Paul Ward, I'll give you Doug's email address. You can send him an unpleasant email. But yeah, it was just he had just had such a good mix of, hey, I'm the leader here. I can help you. But Doug and I, just from the very beginning, developed a good partnership where we could just talk to each other, and it wasn't like a hierarchy. And I think of, my leadership team at BeOne. I've got great RDs, regional directors, that report into me. And, I don't look at myself as their boss. Look, it's our team. Like we're coming to, oftentimes collective decisions and steering the conversation and coming up with a good plan. So I think Doug was particularly good at that, for me, and that's a style, that I've adopted. And Doug too was an MSL for a very long time before he was promoted. And I think one of the things that Doug and we've mentioned the man in the arena, which was a speech by Teddy Roosevelt. And, I think you remember I did a piece in the MSL Journal on that speech and how it's really shaped the way that I look at things. And you guys can look it up. It's just Google Teddy Roosevelt, man in the arena, and you'll get it's only a couple paragraphs. But it just speaks to me that it starts out as it's not the critic who counts. It's the man in the arena, and the people that you really think about that have shaped your career were in the arena with you. Not up in the stands just judging and making comments, but people that are willing to get in the car, getting on a plane and be in the arena with you. And I send that to my leadership team every performance management cycle, because it's easy to sit there and try to be judge and jury. We forget how hard it is to be in the arena, as a field medical professional, and all of the challenges that they face, and the nights and weekends. And sometimes the KOLs are angry at the company, not the MSL, but the MSL is the person standing in front of that angry person. And we ask him to do a lot with, and we pull him in a lot of different directions. So that, Doug was the man in the arena with me, and I'll forever be grateful for that, and try to emulate that in my leadership style for sure.
Yeah. Every time I think about that speech or hear that speech, it reminds me of a book somebody gave me several years ago called A Message to Garcia. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm not. Tell me more, Linda.
It's almost like a little pamphlet, but it's called it's just a small little book. I'll find that, maybe put it in the notes of our podcast. But it's a very short read. Takes an hour or two to read it, and it's about this military example where during, and I don't even remember the details of some war, a general needed to get a message to another general who was named Garcia. And they were asking somebody who could deliver the message, because it was deep in, enemy territory, and they had to overcome lots of obstacles to get the message to Garcia. And they recommended somebody, and the only direction they gave the messenger was deliver this message to Garcia. And he took it, put it in, and he left. He didn't ask a million questions about what to do, how to go. And it was the whole sort of write-up of this concept is like somebody who's dependable will just get it done and figure it out as they go. Those are rare, and I mean, it should be more common, but they're more rare individuals. So every time I think about that speech, I always remember that book. It was one of the best gifts ever given to me. I give it out frequently now, but I love that. I love the speech, because I think it's like, it reminds you, it kind of resets. Okay, wait a second. Especially when you're getting overly critiqued, it helps me reset on how I receive criticism. Is okay, take it in, get it done, learn, move on. And so yeah, I love that speech, but it also reminds me of that book.
Yeah,
I'll give you the information.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I'm going to check that out.
What are one or two books or other resources, that could be podcasts, that you most frequently gift or recommend to peers or friends, and why?
Well, your podcast is quickly climbing, the ranks, and someone that you had on, Tom Caravella, previously, MSL Talk. Tom should probably pay both of us some royalties for as much as I recommend that to people. I mean, it's just so good, and he's just got such a great gift of getting really inspirational leaders on there. And I learned so much from it. And I love the format, like this. It's only 30 to 40 minutes, and it's good for car rides and short walks, and even when you're exercising. So people haven't been on there, and you're in field medical, you're really missing out. I think he's probably approaching 200 different episodes and podcasts that he's done, which is such a commitment. And it's given so much back to medical affairs. And for those that don't know Tom, he owns his own recruiting company, and he's never been in field medical, but he has shaped a lot of what we're doing, and really added a lot of, good dialogue there. And then, Michael Petrak has done the Pharmaverse, which too has been, I think, phenomenal in terms of it. And that's a little bit more broad than just medical affairs. He had Mark Cuban on talking about PBMs, and he said CEOs and R&D folks on there too. But those are the two, I listen to, a lot in books. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I read constantly, and I've recommended, a lot of books, to a lot of people, but, yeah, we'll just dip at the podcast, because if I get in my book club, this will go on for way too long, Linda.
I know when you're sort of a voracious reader, it's hard to recommend any one book because you've read so many good ones.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I've read a lot of books, and others, and several of them stand out as good reads. So it is a challenge to just kind of whittle it down to one. I agree with the podcast, though. I think we are, as a profession, and more podcasts are starting to evolve, and I think there's plenty of room. There's I like completely encourage people who feel like they have a point of view or can contribute to the profession. Man, do it. Do the work, because these are the forums in which we have great conversations. We talk about challenges, and we can really brainstorm how we might need to evolve. So I highly encourage people to listen to the ones that are starting to really get traction, but also I mean, I think people should lean into doing one, because it's a great opportunity.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So what is a small or uncommon habit you practice that has an outsized impact on your effectiveness or well-being?
Well, I think we talked, you've seen this guy, Don Sandell. Don is go positive. That's one word, go positive, no E at the end of positive. And Don and I met at Astellas. He was a commercial learning and development leader, and he started doing positive psychology research. And so he took this. In fact, my MSL team was, I think, the first session he did on the benefits of positive psychology, and how if you show up and you can be positive and mindful, you're better in every aspect of your life, at home, at work, in athletics. And so just being mindful, I think, is one thing that Don and I really, hit it off. And he spoke at the MSL Society. I've had him speak at BeOne and AstraZeneca. He's making a lot of impact in pharma and other industries, and a lot of that came from a guy that we worked with at Astellas, Bhavik. Bhavik was an HEOR, Pandyo is his last name, and Bhavik started teaching us how to do mindfulness with breathing. And if three or four people turned into 6 to 12 people, and before you know it, we had a whole conference room of people, practicing mindfulness and doing breathing exercises. And people were like, "Man, what are these people doing? That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard of." And yeah, 2 weeks later, they're in there with us. And so it just became something that I never thought I would gravitate to, and really take time to be mindful. But, between Bhavik and Don, that it's become a routine for me that really helps shape and keeps me calm and healthy. And really thankful for people like that have introduced some of those concepts to me, because I did not know anything about this until I met Bhavik and Don Sandell.
I love Don. He gives a presentation at the Medical Society. I think everybody walks away feeling invigorated and
Yeah.
recharged a little bit. And what I love most about the breathing exercises is it's behind it. And I don't know if you've ever listened to the Huberman Lab podcast, but he talks about how the sigh had biological signals that reduce anxiety and triggers a cascade of hormones that bring down that sort of fight or flight response. And so I love it. I love that there's science behind it, but I also know that it does have an immediate impact on the breathing exercises can really have a significant impact. So great call out. How do you recharge or maintain resilience when when work becomes intense or overwhelming?
Oh, well, rewind the tape about 3 minutes. It's
Uh,
it's the it's the
Yeah.
breathing, and it's the mindfulness. And I think all of us are working more in a home office than we did prior to 2019 and COVID. And I think, just to add to that, just get outside once in a while. It's easy to be in your home. And if I didn't have such a small bladder, there are days I wouldn't walk more than 1,000 steps, except to head down the hallway here. but make a concerted effort to get out, especially now. We're recording this in April and it's springtime and it's so much easier to get out. I live in Indianapolis and it's awful hard in January and February to get out and about, but it's easy now. And take a break, walk around the block. Your boss isn't going to care if you take a 5-minute walk in between meetings or a 10-minute walk, but you do some of those things for yourself and and not be embarrassed to have your neighbors see you out pounding the pavement a little bit. Teach them,
Mhm.
yeah, it's okay. We need to be outdoors. We need that sun and wind in our face.
Absolutely. Okay. When purchased under $100 changed your life?
I think it was under $100, but I was a really early adopter of the Kindle. Going back to books, and I'd always have a book or two in my briefcase when I traveled. And when the Kindle came out, that must have been early 2000s because I've had several and gifted many too. But that was just such a game changer. Well, I think you're an early Kindle adopter too. You remember the Kindle
Yeah.
was white and had just kind of a tiny screen and paddles to turn the page and a little dot keyboard on there to type things in for when you wanted to buy the book. And that screen couldn't have been more than 4 by 3 or something, 4 inches by 3 inches. Well, and it was all for books. Like the Kindles you can do now for a lot of different things, but at that time it was just for books, and
Yeah.
that really changed my life. I just, if someone that traveled, not having to lug big thick books around on the briefcase made it so much easier to do, and yeah, if you can be anywhere in the world and buy a book, that's pretty cool, right? You just always have that feeling you can do it. And I love it. And that really was a game changer for me.
Yeah, it saved back muscles too, I think, because of the
For sure.
number of books that we didn't no longer had to carry. And I tell you what, it's evolved so much now that you can listen to a book or read a book. And before you could only you choose to buy it or you choose to read it, but now you can choose to buy and read it. And I usually listen and read is what I meant to say. You can listen and or read it, but I often will start off listening to books, and then if they really hit home, I will then read, buy the version that you can read because of the science behind reading, visual reading versus listening. But yeah, it's changed. It's one of the ones on the list that changed my life too. So that's
Good.
interesting. All right, final question, Paul. If you had a giant billboard visible to everyone in medical affairs, what would it say and why?
Giant billboard would say, "Be confident in yourself, in your function. You've got a tremendous amount of knowledge." Um, and sometimes the reason I chose the confidence angle, I think, is oftentimes we hear from MSLs, "Well, I don't have anything to talk about. I don't have a study to give, or we're not working on a research proposal or an investigator-initiated trial, or I don't have an ad board coming up." Just don't discount the knowledge you have and the curiosity that you can employ. People will see you, and people will do that. Just be confident, bring value in a lot of different ways. It's not just by having this. I call it the Santa Claus effect, when you have something in the bag to give, like an ad board or a study. You bringing them up to speed on what the company's doing and what's coming next, and in the pipeline, and decisions that are being made, and how the company is doing, and the strategic direction. Be confident in all of that. People want to know about these things too, not just about the nuts and bolts of the science. So be confident. I'd love to put that and have everybody look at that every day as they leave the house.
Yeah. That, it's a great message that you've got. Be confident that you have more to give to the relationship than just what's in the Santa Claus bag. I love that analogy.
Mhm.
So that's a great billboard and a great way to end this conversation. Paul, you are awesome. Thank you so much for being part of this part of the podcast and the rich conversation as always. Every time I talk to you, I always walk away feeling I got to know you a little bit more, but then I learned a little bit too. So thank you, Paul.
Well, thank you. Thanks for all you're doing in this podcast. is gonna help so many people. I'm happy and humbled to be a part of it. Thanks for thinking of me, Linda.
Of course. Of course. Thank you.